Hello everyone, welcome to Ceci Truman Live. This show will be starting in just a few moments, so stay tuned. And if you're seeing this on social media, please like, share, and follow. For more information, go to trumanforcongress.com. This show is brought to you by Ceci Truman. Here's Ceci.
Today is March 3rd. It is election weekend. How many of you have gone out to vote? Official voting day is Tuesday, which we like to refer to as Super Tuesday. Anyway, welcome to Ceci Live show. I apologize for all the technical difficulties. We're just gonna press through this and just we're on God's grace. And today is an important podcast. We are going to be sharing with two moms, Sandra Martinez and Shannon Thomas. They have both lost their daughters tragically to fentanyl poisoning, and they will be sharing their stories. And we want to honor their two daughters, Gabrielle and Qarinna. Also, we are going to be speaking with a wonderful candidate, a fighter, a go-getter. He is intelligent. His name is Jack Guerrero, and he is running for Riverside County Supervisor. And you want to talk about a brilliant guy and someone who is conservative. He is the perfect fit for Riverside Supervisor. So everyone, welcome. And if there's any technical difficulties ahead, we will just have to plug through, and I apologize ahead of time. So welcome everyone to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
How are you all doing?
Great.
Good.
Very good.
I just had a feeling today. Today was the day. So again, we are here to welcome Jack Guerrero, and he is running for Riverside County Supervisor, a very important role. And we are trying to bring conservative back to California, to our county, Riverside. Not only conservative, but we need to bring back common sense. We need to get rid of politics as usual, because we are midnight hour in our nation, and the power is on the local level. Don't you agree, Jack?
Yes, absolutely. It's very important that we focus on getting conservatives elected to city council, to school board, to the county board of supervisors. Absolutely imperative. Many conservatives think that we need to get, the right president elected or the right U.S. senator, and that's absolutely critical. But I think the closest level of government to the people is the local level, and it's imperative that we elect good people of ethics and competence at that particular level of government.
Absolutely, Jack. And I've been following you for about 1.5 years now, and I have all respect for you because you're a fighter. And, I'm very impressed with your conservative values and how you value life. And at the core of our nation, I believe that we need to value life of the unborn. And when we honor life of the unborn, God will bless our nation. But, in my opinion, that is the root of a lot of our problems, is that we have turned our back on biblical values. We have turned our back on God. We've removed God from society. And what do we have? We have chaos. We have lawlessness. We have really horrific policies. And I have two wonderful women on here that have lost daughters as a result of open border policy. They have lost their daughters to fentanyl poisoning. Jack, what do you have to say about our open borders and the rampant fentanyl poisoning of our children?
I think the circumstances today, regrettably, are so dire that we need to raise even more awareness about the border crisis on every single imaginable level, on national security grounds, on public safety grounds, on public health crisis basis. as well as on a humanitarian level. We have a number of children that are trafficked across the border. We have people that are dying, at the hands of coyotes and other criminal elements that are trying to bring people across the border in the most unlawful and dangerous ways. And so from every angle you could imagine, from economics to public safety to national security to public health, we really need to reform our border protection in a way that minimizes the lawlessness and the pernicious consequences on all other aspects of society. And I think there's a right way we can proceed, but it does absolutely begin with enforcing the law and protecting the border so that we can bring a little bit of, semblance of order back to our country.
Right. And that's kind of, I believe, the game plan of the far leftist, which they have infiltrated every level of our government and education system and society. These very far left radical, let's call it what it is. They are communist, Marxist, socialist. This is never good for any country. Any country that has fallen into the hands of communism, they are not the superpower. They are not the ones that, stabilize the world's the world countries and nations. And but it's just very sad, especially here in California. And you and I, we're both running for office. We have a heart to want to push back against evil. We have a heart to fight for the people because we actually care about the people. This cannot be politics as usual, because life is at stake here. Whether it's, teenagers and young people that are dying from fentanyl, children getting trafficked, innocent babies getting trafficked in the worst ways. This is, right. God sees all of this and he's not okay with this. And you and I and other people like us, grassroots candidates, we are fighting for life and on the side of life.
Right. That's right. And I will also add, Ceci, that the mark sometimes of a civilized society is how it treats its most vulnerable. And you can't think of a more vulnerable population than the unborn, or children. And I think that when our society, through pro-abortion policies or through immigration laws that allow children to be trafficked or children to be victimized through fentanyl and other drugs that get across the border, I think that that's a terrible sign of a civilized society that fails to protect the most vulnerable elements of our people. And so I think we have a moral responsibility as a government to really champion the interests of our fellow citizens.
Right, you're right. And what does the Bible say? To take care of the orphans and the widows. And I would put these children in that category because, we've got some absent-minded parents who have lost their ever-living minds and are subjecting their kids and allowing their kids to be sexualized, whether it's, you see this at the parades or at the school library, public school libraries, or just the public libraries. These things have infiltrated our schools. And so it is our job to, first of all, be the adults in the room and protect the lives of these children, not only their lives, but their mental stability. Because, when children are subjected to, that is the downfall of a nation, is when they're sexualized, when there are no longer borders. We begin to lose sovereignty of a nation, and we begin to lose control of, we begin to abandon the Constitution of the United States. And that is a gift from God. That Constitution is what we are to uphold and defend. And, we should be guarding that at all costs, because, that is how we protect our freedom of speech. This is how we protect freedom of worship, freedom to worship our God. This is how we protect our Second Amendment rights. When we've got open borders, we've got the cartels making billions of dollars. And guess what? They've got not just weapons, but they've got military armored vehicles. You would look at that and think, wow, is that the military? No, it's not. These are the cartels. And so, but yet they want to take our guns away. They want to take our right to defend ourselves. What say you?
I agree with you completely, Ceci. And I will share that a couple of years ago, I was in deep blue Los Angeles County, which is where I'm from originally, and maybe I'll get a chance to share a little bit about my background. But I originally started politically in deep blue Los Angeles County before I moved on to Riverside County after terming out of a local city council position. But I remember back when I was in Los Angeles, I was speaking about the immigration issue with a lot of Democrats and Hispanic families. And I, many of them, of course, are influenced a lot by Spanish language media, which is very, very biased. But when they asked me about my position on immigration and my concerns about a border that is not secure, I referenced a lot of humanitarian concerns. And I tell you, at the end of my conversation with a lot of the residents, they came around to really agree with me that a border that is not secure is a recipe for humanitarian disaster, even from the point of view of the immigrant. And so I think that there's a lot we can do to really raise really good arguments to the other side and get them to really appreciate the severity of this crisis from both the immigrant angle as well as the U.S. citizen angle, and across all facets from economics to public health. And these are areas where I think we can all reasonably agree. Even people on the left, if they listen to the arguments carefully, they can realize that many of us come to our position really from a point of charity in some sense, because we want to improve the lot of everybody who's connected to this issue. And it can only be enhanced and improved if there is some semblance of order in the way that we proceed.
Right. And, I want to mention my district is 75% Hispanic. You and I we kind of share some overlay of our districts in some regards. And, you mentioned the Latinos and how they have their programming, Univision, Telemundo, they have their radio. And it's kind of like our version of CNN, MSNBC.
Yeah.
And, they get propagandized. They get told, well, we're a democracy, which we're not. We're a constitutional republic. But they get told this and they think, oh, democracy sounds like Democrat, so I must be a Democrat. No, what we need to we need to share with them and educate the Latino base is that you are conservative at heart. Most Latinos are pro-life. Most Latinos, they work very hard. They don't want to send their children to a public school so that their kids can get sexualized. They're not okay with that.
That's right.
And when we explain, and they're usually Catholic, very religious, or Christian. And you and I'm Christian. I think you're Catholic.
Catholic,
and
yes.
We have very conservative values, and so what we need to educate the Latino community, which they are coming on board at a very high and rapid rate. They are jumping on board with the Republican vote, and that's the influx of immigration, because these Democrats know that their policies do not work. So they see the writing on the wall. They see that the Black community is leaving them. I don't know how many people I've talked to from the Black community that says, I'm voting Republican, I'm voting for you, I'm voting for Trump, because it's like they can't pay their bills. Their grocery bills are too high. It's like, we feel the pain of Bidenflation. It's very evident. It's right in front of our face. And so we are going to gain the Black vote. We are going to gain the Hispanic vote. I don't know what your experience is in your district.
Yes, that's absolutely right. I think we are really positioned this year to get a lot of people from historically non-conservative demographics, like working class families, Hispanics, African Americans, because a lot of these issues are now very visibly displayed, whether it's public safety or Bidenflation and economic deterioration, or the lack of stability from a financial standpoint in people's lives. And so these are really tangible, visible manifestations of terrible left-wing policy that is now afflicting demographics across the state. And I think this is kind of a point of inflection in our state's history, I believe, where a lot of these demographics that historically have not voted Republican, are now suddenly starting to realize that there's an alternative set of policies that can be substantially more beneficial to their lot in life if they have an open mind about the conservative position.
That's right. Jack, are you able to stay with us, on with us for
Yes.
this hour? You are? Okay, great.
Yes,
I want
thank
to
you.
introduce the guest. We have Shannon Thomas and we have Sandra Martinez. And Sandra, I met you at one of the forums that I think, Jack, you might have been there, but many candidates were there. And you came up to me after the forum and you thanked me because you said, I don't know if I was the only one or one of the only ones that talked about the fentanyl issue and the border issue. And that is my, I don't like calling it a slogan because that sounds very superficial, but what I like to say in my captions is secure the borders, save lives. And so Sandra, I was very touched and moved by your story, and that's how you and I met. And then you introduced me to Shannon. But I want to share with you ladies a video clip. If you can roll that video clip, I want to share with the audience.
And we're going to fight this fight, and we're going to hold the people responsible, whether it's the Chinese government for making it precursors or the Mexican cartels for poisoning our children. I can promise you, I've spoken to President Trump numerous times about this. When he gets back in office, we're going to war with these people, and we're going to save some lives. Again.
When we found the memorandum where Secretary Mayorkas actually directed the employees of DHS to break the law. And when we had that memorandum, he is essentially telling the people of DHS that the laws passed by the United States Congress don't matter, and he basically can pick and choose whichever laws he wants to enforce. That's pretty shocking.
The most humane way to handle the border for both the illegal aliens, illegal migrants that are heading this way, and for our nation is to enforce the law, period.
That's really hard to watch, and you ladies have had to live the pain of this, of losing your child. And both of your daughters are so beautiful, and it's just life cut too short. Sandra, can you share briefly your story, Qarinna's story, and how her life was cut too short?
Yeah, of course. So Qarinna, like a lot of these kids, some of the kids grow up and sometimes they have weaknesses. I would say like they have a little bit of lack of confidence. They might have some shame. They might not fit in with other kids. And when you don't set from the beginning standards to have self-love and self-appreciation, when things happen in life, what happens? The influence of peers and friends. Typically, we see the kids are getting the one pill, so they call it the one pill can kill campaign, right? With my daughter's story, it was a little different. She had those junior, issues, the self-confidence, but when she got sick is when it actually hit her, and that was in 2015. She was giving birth to her third child, and she was diagnosed with stomach issues. Weren't quite sure, but they were very painful. And so she was a patient at a very well-known hospital in California, getting treatments for years. And during that process, it was the doctors prescribing opioids, very high-level opioids. So fentanyl, lidocaine fentanyl patches to her shoulders, lidocaine drips with fentanyl in it, Botox, internal Botox. There was so many tests that were done that She was a human guinea pig, but I really believe her doctors were her first drug dealers. And so here goes a normal girl, 3 babies, now has an illness. Doctors are not finding the issue, not giving her remedies. She was hopeless. She was so sick, and she really struggled just to survive. So when the doctors gave her 2 options of what she could do for treatment, they were so aggressive, and she just had lost hope because she was in so much pain. Again, at that point, she was a complete addict to prescription meds. And all it took was one person on the street saying, you know what, if you take a little bit of heroin because your doctors aren't helping you, you'll get rid of the pain. And they gave her a form, which led to a different form and a different form. Pretty soon she was injecting heroin. So my normal daughter, who loved her girls with her whole heart, you can see the picture behind me, which had a beautiful family. We're not talking about a troubled teen that was running away from home. We're talking a normal girl went from being a mom to being an addict on the street, being human trafficked, being drug muled. Because she was a beautiful girl, we were told that there were high dollar to human traffic her. It was just a battle. And I sought for so many detox facilities to get treatments. The detox facilities are, in my opinion, is just a moneymaker. It's not about helping the child. They get paid regardless. If your child's there for a day or a week, they still get paid. And your child is then back out doing the same thing they were doing. But now because fentanyl has been introduced to the street drugs, it's Russian roulette. They consume something and they potentially are dead that moment. So we had just a really grievous way. I had sought for help from our politicians, local and up into Sacramento. I mean, I was hitting the phone book, hitting emails, trying to get help from everyone. The door kept closing on me. None of the local officials here did anything. I mean, and I'm talking our local officials. My DA was amazing. Mike Hestron and his team was amazing. And the police chief is amazing here as well. But to get help from any actual politicians that could overrule and change things, it was nothing. They were like crickets. So it came back to the point where I learned that when they look at children or people that have been addicts, they don't see them as a life force. They don't see them as someone's child, someone's baby. They look at it like whatever they did, they deserved it because they were an addict. But I tell all of them when I have an opportunity, look at your family photos and pick a child, because that one of your children you're going to potentially lose, because fentanyl is in everything. Everything. And in my daughter's lethal dose that was given to her last day of life, she had carfentanil, norfentanil, fentanyl, heroin, morphine, Norco, penicillin, Vicodin, methamphetamine. It was a lethal dose. She had elephant tranquilizer, horse tranquilizer. They mixed it all in there. And I'm not going to talk about the more grievous things that happened after she got that injection, unless you want me to explain, but it was horrible. And I know that when they found her, I believe they treated her like she was a common druggie on the street, and there was no compassion for her being my daughter, her being a mother. There was no compassion that what got her there. Nobody wakes up in the morning and say, today I want to be an addict. There's something that happens. It's either an injury, it could be an emotional trauma, it could be a physical trauma. Anything could happen to create the addiction. Mm-hmm. But we need to get better at offering emotional support. We need to get better at giving real detox therapies. I mean, I believe we really need to come on top of these detox facilities and hold them accountable for when they take a patient in. I was trying to get our local officials to change the law that my child is 5150. She cannot make the decision to stay in on her own recognizance, because she herself doesn't even know if she's present. Her mind is gone with the street drugs that they gave her. So I want to take like a medical liaison for her and, you know, make her stay in treatment, but they don't do that. You go in, if you choose to leave, no matter what they put in your system, they open the door and they let you leave. And I know some of the laws that are being put on the table right now, I'm excited to see them come in, because yes, they will not bring my daughter back, but if they can spare someone else's child, and one I believe is coming in, they will hold, if you have a substance on you, you have the choice, detox or jail.
Yes.
And if that would have been the fact, like it used to be back in the day when I was growing up, if that would have been my daughter's case, she had methamphetamines on her one time, she would have been forced to go to jail or forced to go into detox. I believe I would have my daughter right now. But because that was not the case, she didn't get the chance to get better. She didn't get the chance to get healed. And she doesn't get the chance to be a mother to her two little girls that so I can't even explain the emotions that go through them. But they don't get to have their mom at their wedding. They don't get to have their mom by their side at all. And it's heartbreaking. And they get zero support from the state. They get nothing. But our border is wide open for people to come in, bring their deadly drugs, put out their hand and get cash aid, get medical benefits. They get everything. And us, where we have children that really needed help, or my grandchildren that still need help, they get nothing. It's a completely broken system.
Right, it is. And, you know, it's gotten worse in the last few years. It has not improved. And this administration in California, the ratio of, excuse me, the assembly is about 80% Democrat to 20% Republican. And the Republicans are fighting with all that they have to get good legislation in to put protections in place for situations like this. Governor Newsom has lowered felony crimes to misdemeanor crimes. They have closed 50% of California prisons. They have, you know, made California a sanctuary state for open borders for immigrants. They hand them debit cards, $5,000-$10,000 on the debit cards, give them health benefits, and the list goes on. And yet the taxpayers, the law-abiding citizens like you and Shannon, we don't get any benefits. We get treated like, you know, like everything's in reverse. You know, the taxpayers get treated like criminals, basically. Like we pay the taxes, we obey the laws, and when we need our system to work for us, it's not there. Shannon, your daughter Gabrielle lost her life too early. Can you share her story with the audience?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that opening really brought me back. So Gabrielle was the typical child growing up, and she was really, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background to give you an idea of who she was, because people seem to think that people that pass away from a substance abuse disorder were terrible addicts, or that they were on the street. And even people on the street were human beings one day. Yes. Just like Sandra said, nobody woke up one day and said they wanted to be an addict. It's not that way. And so Gabrielle had a typical childhood. She got straight A's. She was an honor student. And she played, sorry, this is very emotional for me.
Take your time.
In high school, I think what really got her was the emotional part of it. So the mental health system here in the United States is just broken, because there's no help for even parents. We cannot even go to the doctor and talk about our kids after the age of 15 to find out what's going on with them. And here
Well,
I was seeing a problem with my child at 15 years old, but the doctor wouldn't tell me what it was.
mhm.
And there was nothing I could do about that. This is where I started to see a shift in her. My daughter was actually bipolar. Okay. So we didn't know that. She was our first child, but she put her all into everything. So as I started to tell you, she was on the track team for 3 years. She played basketball for 2 years. She got out of high school. She had a lot of friends. She went to college for nursing and was doing well. And then boom, one day she just lost it. Like it was like she was holding everything up in balance.
Mhm.
But going backwards, what I was noticing and didn't realize what I was noticing is that she was messing with Adderall at 15. And I didn't realize that.
Explain what Adderall does, the effects of Adderall.
Okay. The effects of Adderall, that's for ADHD. Okay. And that's given to people that have a learning disability. And what it does is it speeds you up. And where Gabby was playing all the sports and she was working very hard and trying to keep up, people with bipolar disorder will try to supplement their ailment or their illness, not knowing that they need a supplement, but they'll reach out and try to get a supplement for something else, like whether it's drinking or drugs, alcohol, coffee, stimulants. But what Adderall does is it speeds you up. And I could see her just marching around the house. She was either angry and grouchy or really low. And I couldn't put my handle on it. And the doctor would not talk to me. This is where I lost my child. She did very well, though. So she graduated. And I wasn't aware that she had all these problems. Excuse me, I've had a cough.
Okay.
And so she got out of high school, did quite well for about a year. And then one day, I started to notice that she stopped wearing makeup. She stopped doing her hair. She wasn't going to work like she was supposed to. And she seemed depressed. And there wasn't really anything I could do because Gabby wasn't one that really wanted to talk. And so, and she was a very independent little soul. She was out of the house by 18. She was just out of here. And what really got her was the move, the emotional part. So we moved in high school. So right before high school, we made a move. And that's what really set her off, her mentality off. And so I noticed that she wasn't doing well. And then by Mother's Day, our relationship got so frazzled, and she was just disappearing, that she just disappeared. And I kept praying to God every night, and I was just asking him, please, God, just show me where she's at. Show me where she's at. And I know he was doing that. He was showing me where she was at, because I would drive in the middle of the night looking for my child and end up like at a gas station that was maybe a mile from where she was staying. But she had gotten on some drugs. And it went from methamphetamine. So imagine ADHD medication, Adderall, has methamphetamine in it. So she's supplicating and finds methamphetamine, which is also, it's like speed. It's like crushed up pills. I didn't know that. I think Sandra told me that. And so she was on methamphetamine. But long story short, how we lost Gabrielle is that her first love was pills. And that came from high school. And also people in sports, like children in sports, they're encouraged by their coaches to take ibuprofen and Tylenol, and she was just always trying. I always had to count her pills. I always had to hand them to her because I noticed early on that she was overstimulating. And she would say, well, my coach tells me I need to take more because
Wow.
yes, right, that's not right. And so that was her affinity, was pills. It was in the end that affinity is what killed her. So moving on up, we go through this whole battle with methamphetamine addiction and bipolar disorder. And there wasn't anything I could do about it because I would have had to go to court to try to get her mentally incapacitated, but she was actually very smart. And she would go on these long bouts where she wasn't okay and we would almost lose her. This happened, we went through this for about 8 years, and there were three long spouts about 8 months long where she'd be deep in the addiction and then she'd come out and then she'd do it again. The first time we got her into Teen Challenge, which is a Christian organization. And it was amazing. It was amazing. They got her clean. They got her reconnected with God. And she came out and she was just doing amazing. And she was planning on going on a mission. And she lasted about 3 years like that. And then fell back into drugs again because I guess she'd had a terrible breakup. And we got her into a center. And the centers, they only can do so much for you. That's it. They can only do so much for you. Our insurance ran out. So they said, sorry, ma'am, you know, it is what it is. And they sent her home. We were just out of money. And that was so hard. So I was left, my husband and I were left to take care of this, an adult, what was she, 25-year-old woman who you can't stop, right?
Right.
And so coming to the demise is that we finally got her clean, but she was never the same after that. She had damaged her kidneys. She damaged her liver. And this was a beautiful, bright girl who had so much to give. Now, I know I'm telling you all of this, but towards the end of her life, she did get clean. And you know what she was doing? She was out on the streets, pulling people off the streets.
Wow.
And she was helping them get into centers, like free centers.
Wow.
To save their lives.
Wow.
And she was also writing a book at the end of her life about how people were able to get out of their addiction because she wanted to know how they got out of this. She was a bright girl, but she definitely was never the same after that. So ultimately what happened was she was with her church. She was on a mission trip, and they were traveling from San Antonio to Odessa, Texas. Actually, no, it was El Paso, but it happened in Odessa, Texas. She'd had a rollover accident. So they sent their people out at 6 a.m. midnight to travel that distance. There was the driver in the front seat, a passenger, and Gabrielle was in the back. And she had taken her seatbelt off, and it was a van. And the lady who was driving fell asleep at the wheel.
Oh,
and
no.
she overcorrected 3 times and flipped the van 6 times down the ravine.
Oh, no.
Gabby was thrown 25 feet and broke so many bones in her body.
Oh, no.
I can't even tell you. I mean, so many painful bones and bones that would take a long time, like her hip, her pubic bone, her collarbone. I mean, on and on and on. So, but that was a grand opportunity for us to take care of her. So we did that, and she started to get into recovery, and she was doing very well. She was recovering for a year. She did very well. But then she started dating this guy who was in recovery as well. And we always teach not to do that, but they don't listen to us, especially with mental illness. They don't listen. So she ended up taking a pill, an illicit street pill that had Percocet markings on it.
Wow.
For the pain from her prior accident, because those aches and pains don't just go away.
Right.
And meanwhile, she was not covered on insurance any longer because she's 27. She'd been off of insurance for only 5 months.
Wow.
That's it, 5 months. And she was forced in her mind to get something for pain off the streets, because she'd have to go to the ER and wait for 6 to 8 hours for her mental wellness, ibuprofen, for her bipolar, and for anything else.
Wow.
And it just took one pill, and she was gone. And so we had to travel to Arizona to go get her. Long story short, our system is broken. We were failed in far many ways. I'm sure I've expressed it all without saying. And her death was never investigated appropriately, of course. She was looked at as a drug addict. And it was all because I said, yes, she has a drug history, but she's been clean. So I am just so grateful that you are fighting for our borders. And lastly, I am going to tell you that after all of this was done, I found myself, as every mother and father has been doing, questioning what happened, what went wrong. And you go through this whole year of brain fog and grief and turmoil. And so do your kids. That's the biggest problem, is that families are falling apart. Our families are being torn apart by all of these drugs being poured in. And we're all being poisoned by fentanyl. It's not just fentanyl. It's methamphetamine, it's cocaine, it's heroin, it's marijuana, and it's all, fentanyl is in all of it. And what the general public doesn't realize is that we're being poisoned to death. Because nobody goes out to buy a Diet Coke and then drink it and find out that they died from fentanyl, if that makes sense. I know that may not make sense to someone else, but families are being torn apart. Nobody expects their child to die that way. It's horrific. And I just want our borders to be safe.
Yes.
And my question is why? And I've spent the last 4 years studying that answer. And it is because of all of the loose things that are happening in our country. Gabby didn't deserve to die.
Yes. Thank you both for sharing that, your hearts and your pain. And it's good for Jack and I and others like us, not just candidates running for office, but people who are sitting in places of authority. They need to hear your story, because your daughters are not just another number. Like you said, you brought up a very good point, Shannon, that this affects whole families.
Yes.
This affects, so, we need to protect also not only our children, but the family unit is so critical. We've got about 6 minutes to talk, but I wanted to share with you that video that we watched. Tom Homan, he was the previous director of ICE under the previous administrations, but the last one was President Trump. They had the border under control. We had the best, we had a stay in Mexico policy. We had the least crossings of any administration. And that was Tom Homan in Israel. And I actually filmed him saying that because I knew someone else who had just lost their adult son as well to fentanyl poisoning. And so that's why I had him on video. But, he, I believe, will come back as the director of ICE. President Trump, when he comes back as president, he's already said Tom Homan will be our Director of ICE once again. And so I'm very honored to have received his endorsement. And I want to work really hard to secure our borders, to protect families and people who otherwise would not have been subjected to this poison. And, this is, the cartels cannot do anything without the blessing of China. China does send across the waters, the Pacific Ocean, ingredients for labs that we have about 100 known labs in Mexico where they are producing this poison. And I wanted Jack to have a closing statement. We have about 2 minutes, Jack. Do you have anything you wanted to add?
I just want to really thank Shannon and Sandra for sharing their story. A lot of us are politicians that try to do the right thing for local communities, but it's really important that we hear directly from people who are most afflicted by a lot of the issues that our local communities face. And so I really just want to commend Shannon and Sandra for your courage. I'm listening. And it's important that I hear your story and that I think about your story when I implement public policy in a way that will benefit families like yours. And so you have my commitment, to be sensitive to your experience and to really try to do the right thing, not for special interests or for developers or people who pay money and contribute into the process, but for real people who are afflicted by real problems. And it's really about being responsive to the people, because that's what government really should be about at the end of the day. It's buying for the people. And so I just want to really commend you, Sandra and Shannon, for sharing your story. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I say one thing, Ceci?
Yes.
Okay, real quick. I wanted to mention this. I think if the general public, if everyone always says, not my home, it won't happen to me. But we are losing 300 plus people a day to fentanyl. That's like a 747 crashing every day. And if our people, our community, the U.S. saw a plane crashing every day, they would be up in arms. And they would be wanting answers. And the other thing is that we have a lot of labs here now. It's not just even in Mexico. We have a lot of labs here that are making the fentanyl, and it is being given to even elementary school kids. People are actually giving it through the fence to elementary kids. So it is on the playground. It's in the food. I've known adult women that have gone to a bridal shower and somehow liquid fentanyl was on their glass and they died. So it's an assassination.
It is
Genocide.
And this is how, this is a war. War has been declared on America. Yes. Americans need to wake up and realize this, that this is killing Americans without shooting a single bullet. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I just, I want to end on a good note that, your daughter's lives will not go in vain. We are going to continue to talk about their story, bring it to the forefront. And I just want to commend you, ladies. I agree with Jack that you are very courageous. We send our deepest condolences, and that comes from another mother of adult sons. Your daughter's lives will not go in vain. And, I just know that your daughters are with the Lord, and they have been exposed to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I just believe that God's grace and mercy is upon your families. And, our hope is in Christ. Our hope is in heaven. Ultimately, we are here on this horrible earth that's getting more chaotic, but we're here to fight for righteousness in the land. Jack and I want to fight for righteous legislation. We want to work for you, for the people, because that is our heart. And so on that note, I just want to thank you all once again. God bless you. God save America. And let's remember 2 Chronicles 7:14, that if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, will seek my face, will turn from their wicked ways, then God promises to hear from heaven, to answer our prayers, and to heal our land. Thank you all. Amen. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. And remember, go vote on Tuesday. Go vote in person. God bless you.
Thank you
guys. Take care.
This show was brought to you by Ceci Truman.